This happened a few years ago in 2019. I haven't talked about it much, not because I'm scared people won't believe me, but because I still don't know exactly what I saw. Even now I go back and forth between thinking it was just my imagination and knowing deep down that it wasn't. It was early November and I had stayed late at work finishing a report. I worked in a small office complex on the edge of a town in southern Michigan. Not remote, but quiet enough at night that it felt like you were alone. The complex backed up to a drainage pond and a stretch of woods that hadn't been developed yet. Past that, there was nothing but trees and silence. I left the building a little after 9. Everyone else had cleared out hours earlier. The hallway was already dark except for the exit signs, and the parking lot was nearly empty. It was just my car under a buzzing security light, and a lot of dark space between me and the tree line. As I stepped outside, I noticed it smelled. Not like garbage or anything you'd expect near the dumpsters. More like wet dog fur and something faintly metallic. I remember wrinkling my nose and pulling my coat tighter without even thinking about it. It was subtle, but it lingered just enough to make me glance towards the woods. I walked quickly to my car, unlocked it, and got in. As I shut the door and started the engine, I heard a sound. It was faint, but clear. A low growl, drawn out and almost deliberate. It wasn't close. It came from somewhere near the tree line, or just past it. But I felt it when the hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. My hands were already on the steering wheel, but I froze, eyes locked on the rearview mirror like something was going to come charging out of the dark. I turned on my headlights and slowly backed out of my spot. My breath was shallow, my stomach tight. It wasn't panic exactly, but definitely adrenaline. And then, just as I was pulling toward the exit of the lot, my headlights hit something. It was stepping across the narrow service path at the far end of the parking lot, just before the woods started. I only saw it for maybe 2 seconds, but I'll never forget how it looked. It was upright and tall, well over 6 feet, broad shoulders and long limbs, covered in dark shaggy fur. It moved like it had too many joints, or like it was used to walking on 4 legs and hadn't figured out how to stand properly. I don't remember its face clearly, just a long, narrow shape, maybe a snout, and ears set too high on its head. It wasn't running, just crossing confidently, like it didn't care that I was there at all. And then it was gone, back into the trees. I sat frozen in the car, the engine idling, hands still on the wheel. I stared at the spot it had crossed, half expecting it to come back out. Nothing else moved. The smell was gone, and the growl didn't come back. I eventually pulled out of the lot and drove home without turning on the radio, trying to reason with myself the whole way. Maybe it was a dog, maybe someone's weird costume, maybe a trick of the light. But I know what I saw. I told my husband the next day that I thought someone might be lurking near the woods. That part was true. I just didn't say what I thought the someone looked like. For weeks after, I kept parking closer to the building, under the brightest light. I never stayed too late if I could help it. I never looked too long at the trees. Every now and then, I still think about it, especially if I'm driving past that area near dusk. I'll glance towards the woods, expecting to see something just standing there, half in the shadows. So far, I haven't. But I don't think I imagined it. And if I did, I wish I didn't remember it so clearly. I've debated sharing this because I don't want attention, but I figure enough weird stuff happens out at NTC that maybe someone else has seen something too. I'm active duty Army stationed in the Midwest, but this happened last fall during a 3-week rotation at Fort Irwin. It was our second week in the box, out in the desert near the Northwest Corridor not far from the Thai Fort Mountains. If you've been to NTC, you know the terrain. Endless sand, broken scrub, weird rock formations, and not a single tree in sight. It's isolation at scale. That night, I was on watch duty for a squad security perimeter. It was around 0200 and the moon was out bright enough to see silhouettes without NVGs. I had my nods clipped up and was just doing a slow walk around our position. We dug in by a dried out arroyo, using a few berms and a rusted vehicle carcass for cover. Everything was quiet. There was no movement or Op 4. I was tired but alert, and I remember specifically that it wasn't windy. It was still and dead silent. That's why I noticed it, the sound. Not loud, barely audible, like gravel shifting, about 30 meters off behind a low rise. At first, I thought it was a jackrabbit or a fox. We'd seen plenty of those already. I froze and scanned the slope. After a while, I moved 5 steps forward and heard it again, closer this time. Same sound, a slow shuffle across dirt followed by absolute stillness. I raised my rifle and looked through the thermal. No heat signature out there. I was just about to write it off when I saw a silhouette maybe 20 meters out, standing just behind the crest of the hill. The profile was all wrong, too narrow and too tall. Shoulders sloped weird. I blinked and it was gone, just dropped out of view. I thought maybe one of our own guys had wandered off, so I gave a quiet call out on the squad net to check on everyone. Everyone checked in, all accounted for. Now I'm on edge. I slowly walk up the hill, keeping low. My heart beats steady, but my mouth is dry. I get to the spot where I saw it, and there was nothing. No tracks, no shape, just hard-packed sand and rock. But then I hear it again directly behind me. This time I know I'm not imagining it. I spin around with my muzzle up, and I swear to God, something ducks behind a formation maybe 10 meters out. It moved on 2 legs, and it was very fast. I didn't see any detail, just shape and motion, but it ran low like it wasn't built right. I radioed again, and they all thought it was Op 4 messing with us. They told me to stay put and observe. So I stayed and crouched low, halfway behind a rock, and watched. And then I heard it. A voice. It sounded like my sergeant, the way he talks when he's pissed off and whispering. But my sergeant was asleep in his fart sack, 40 feet behind me. The voice came from the dark, just off to my left. Same tone, same cadence. But I knew it wasn't him. Because it didn't come from a radio and it wasn't a whisper. It was like someone trying to sound like him, but not getting it quite right. My legs locked up and my body tensed and my heart began to race. Every hair on my arm stood up. I felt combat stress before, and this was different. It wasn't adrenaline. It was more like my body was screaming "get out" without knowing why. Then I caught movement again, lower this time. Something crawling along the ridgeline. Long limbs and elbows were too high. It moved like a human trying to act like an animal, or maybe the other way around. It wasn't wearing a uniform or any gear. It was just skin and silhouette. I flicked my IR laser on it and lit it up for a second. Just a flash, but it vanished. Like it dove flat behind the rock and melted into the earth. Nothing else moved after that. I stayed in position until sunrise with my rifle up the entire time. There were no more sounds and no more voices. When we did morning accountability, I asked if my sergeant had been up at any point during the night. He looked at me weird and said, "No, I was out cold." I didn't file a formal report. What would I say? Something weird crawled around the perimeter and mimicked a guy's voice? They'd bounce me to mental health in 5 seconds. But here's the part that really got me. When I went back out to the ridgeline during daylight, I found a small dead rabbit with its head twisted all the way around, like it had been snapped. There was no blood or bite marks. It was just broken and left out into the open. There were no Op 4 tracks, no animal prints. Nothing but wind-smooth sand and that one twisted rabbit like a calling card. I haven't talked about it until now, but I still think about that voice, how close it sounded, like it was testing how well it could sound like us. I'm writing this because I've gone over the night in my head too many times. I'm not interested in attention, and I don't care if anyone believes me. but I know what I experienced wasn't normal, and I think someone else should hear about it, just in case. The night this happened, I was driving home from a weekend visit with my sister in La Crosse. I live near Whitewater, and I'd taken the longer scenic route through the driftless area. Beautiful during the day, not so much at night. It was near 11:30 p.m. when I pulled off at a rest area outside of a place called Lone Rock. The stretch of Highway 12 through there is rural, nothing but farmland and forest for long gaps. I had passed one gas station closed for the night and hadn't seen another lit sign in 20 miles. I only stopped because I had to use the bathroom. I hadn't seen another car for at least 10 minutes, but I figured the state-maintained rest stop would be safe enough. It wasn't much, just a gravel pull-off loop with an old concrete restroom building, a faded picnic table, and a vending machine with the glass cracked. There were no other vehicles and no light beyond a flickering yellow bulb above the restroom door. I parked facing the exit, left the engine running, and grabbed my flashlight from the glove box before heading toward the building. The light above buzzed faintly, and the smell of wet leaves and cold dirt hung in the air. It was October, leaves mostly down, the trees bare and dark like silhouettes. That was when I first heard something strange. A scrape like claws on concrete that were quick and light. I stopped, shined my flashlight around, but I didn't see anything. I figured it was a raccoon or maybe a fox. I kept going, but slower now, just listening. The wind had died, and the night had that deep, hollow stillness you only get away from town. Inside, the restroom smelled like mildew and cold tile. I did my business quickly and didn't even bother washing my hands. I just wanted to be back in my car. As I stepped back outside, I heard it again. Scrape, scrape, tap. The sound came from the left, near the edge of the building. I turned the flashlight, my heart already pounding. I didn't see anything as I scanned the trees, just dead leaves skittering. But my body was already reacting even though logically nothing had registered. The hair on my arms was standing up. My stomach tightened, my legs itched to move. I started walking back to the car fast, and halfway there, I saw something move. It was on the far side of the gravel loop, just past the vending machine. It was a shape that was low and fast, slipping behind the picnic table. I didn't get a full view, just motion, but it moved on all fours, or so I thought. I stopped dead in my tracks, but told myself to keep walking. There was something about the way it moved that didn't sit right with me. It had weight, like it landed hard with each step. Too big for a fox, not shaped like a dog. The shoulders were wrong. The way it turned as it moved was too fluid. I backed toward my car now, slowly. Then something let out a low sound, not quite a growl and not a bark. More like a long exhale that vibrated in my chest. I dropped the flashlight and I didn't pick it up. I sprinted the last 20 feet, yanked the driver's door open and slammed it behind me. I instantly locked the doors. The headlights were still on, illuminating the gravel and tree line, but there was nothing out there. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, my breath loud in my ears. I felt hot and cold at the same time, like my skin was sweating but my blood had frozen. I turned off the interior dome light so I wouldn't be lit up, and that's when I saw it. It stepped just into the edge of the headlights, on the far side of the rest area, maybe 40 feet away. I know how this sounds, I do. It was standing upright, but it wasn't a person. Its limbs were too long, bent at the joints with the knees slightly reversed. Its chest was too narrow, its arms hung past the waist. And its head looked like a dog's, but broader, more like a wolf. It didn't sway or breathe heavily, it just stood there. And I was absolutely sure it was looking at me. I've never been that afraid before. It wasn't the normal fear you get from missing a turn or hearing a bump in the night. This was primal. I felt it in my teeth, my tongue went numb, my heart slammed so hard that I thought I'd pass out. I reached for the gear shift too fast and my fingers fumbled. The thing then flinched. That was the first time it moved. Not toward me, just a twitch, a shoulder drop like it was reacting. Then it did something I'll never forget. It dropped to all fours, effortlessly like it was natural. 1 second it was upright and the next it was crouched low. its back legs folded under in that same reverse-jointed way. Its front limbs hit the ground hard. It moved like it was made to both stand upright and walk on all fours. I threw the car in reverse and cranked the wheel and gunned it. I didn't look back. I drove 20 minutes before I even thought about checking the mirror. When I did, it was just blackness behind me, the red glow of my taillights, the only sign I hadn't dreamed it. I didn't stop until I hit a gas station on the edge of Sauk City. I pulled into the lot, parked under the bright canopy, and sat with the engine running and my doors locked for a long time. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't tell anyone at first. What would I even say? Hey, I think I saw a werewolf at a rest stop? No. But I did go online and I started searching, quietly. I didn't even know what to look for at first. I typed in things like upright animal sighting in Wisconsin and Wolfman Highway 12. That's when I found references to the Beast of Bray Road, sightings going back years, mostly in southeast Wisconsin. Some called it a werewolf, others said Dogman. I'm not saying that's what I saw, but the descriptions matched too close for comfort. And Lone Rock? That's barely 60 miles from Elkhorn, where a lot of those stories had started. In September 2021, I was contracted to run a solo survey near the southern edge of the Snake River Plain in Idaho. It was supposed to be a standard 3-day job: soil sampling, GPS logging, and geological notes for a land use company. The site was in a place called Dry Hollow, just outside a small town I won't name. Mostly Bureau of Land Management acreage with no nearby homes, no trails, and no people. Sparse scrub, basalt outcrops, and cattle gates were about all there was to it. I've done plenty of these gigs alone before, but this one stuck with me for reasons I still can't explain. I arrived mid-morning, parked my truck on a flat ridge above a dry wash, and walked in with my gear. Everything looked typical: dusty ground, patchy sagebrush, and layered rock formations worn flat by wind and time. But maybe an hour in, I had a strange moment. I was collecting samples near a lava shelf when I noticed something half buried in the sediment. A shredded piece of denim, torn and sun-bleached. Could have been from an old hiker or ranch hand, but there weren't any trails out there. No boot tracks either. It looked like it had been out there for a long time, but it was weirdly out of place. Later that afternoon, I spotted a jackrabbit sitting dead still on the rocks, maybe 30 yards away. It didn't bolt when I got close. It just watched me, totally unmoving. I remember the weird chill I got, like I'd walked in on something I wasn't supposed to see. Still, nothing dramatic happened. I set up camp not far from the truck and went over my notes after sunset. I heard coyotes after dark, normal enough. One barked close to camp around 1 a.m., but I was too tired to worry about it. I thought I heard a heavy footfall near the tent once, maybe twice, but figured it was my imagination, so I went back to sleep. The second day, I pushed west toward the basin's edge. Around 11 a.m., I got that feeling you get when someone's looking at you. My shoulders were tense, my jaw clenched without me realizing it. I turned to scan the rocks behind me, but I didn't see anything. Around 1:30, I stopped near a dry ravine to take water and reset my GPS, when I smelled something foul. Not just a whiff, but this deep, nauseating stench, like something dead had been sitting in the sun for too long. It was thick, sour, and it seemed to hang in the back of my throat. I gagged a little. I walked around thinking maybe something had died nearby, a rodent, a bird, even a deer, but I couldn't find anything. No carcass, no buzzards. The smell just lingered, then faded like it wasn't there at all. That's when I noticed how quiet it was. There were no birds or bugs. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then I heard movement. Slow and deliberate crunching of dry brush maybe 50 feet up the ridge behind me. I froze and held my breath, but it stopped when I turned toward it. I called out once, "Hello?" but got no answer. The rest of the day I felt watched, not constantly, but on and off, like something was watching my pace from a distance. I moved faster than I normally would, took shorter notes, skipped samples. Back at the camp, I sat in the truck instead of the tent. I ate a protein bar for dinner and kept the doors locked. Sometime after midnight, I woke up sweating and alert. I didn't hear anything, it was just a terrible awareness. I was in my tent, but it felt like something was standing just outside it. Then I heard my name, Amanda. It wasn't loud, it wasn't clear. More like a soft voice carried by the breeze, sort of wispy. I sat up so fast I knocked over my headlamp. Silence followed after that, and the wind wasn't even moving. I listened for a full minute before I slowly unzipped the tent. There was no one out there. I did a slow 360 with the flashlight. The beam caught brush, fence posts, nothing else. Still, I slept the rest of the night in the cab of my truck, keys in hand. I considered leaving, but pride kept me from quitting early. I told myself it was stress, maybe dehydration, maybe coyotes messing with me. By late morning, I'd made it out to the last rock shelf at the western edge of the basin. It was quieter than ever, flat sun and no breeze. Then I found the prints. At first, I thought they were canine, deep claw marks and oval pads, but the size didn't make sense. They were wider than a coyote or even a large dog. The spacing was long, like something tall had made them walking upright. They went for maybe 20 feet before just stopping. No backtrack and no turnoff. My stomach dropped. I took one picture before the smell hit again, and it was stronger than before. Like decay and wet rot and stagnant water all layered together. I pulled my shirt over my nose and backed up, and that's when I heard the voice again. Amanda. No question, same tone, no source. Then something moved above the ledge. When I looked up, I saw there was a figure. It was tall, too tall, half shadowed by the rock, covered in dark, matted hair, arms too long, torso too lean. Its head was narrow with high-set ears, or maybe horns. The sun was behind it, making the edges shimmer like a heat mirage. But I swear it was looking at me. It didn't move like a man. It didn't move like an animal either. It shifted like something learning how to stand. I turned and ran, and I didn't stop until I reached my truck. I left the tent, left the gear, left the mark samples and coordinates, and just drove out of there. I told the company I had equipment issues and left early. They didn't press me any further. 3 weeks later, I looked up tribal history in the area, found references to skinwalkers and shapeshifters, witches in animal skin, beings that mimic voices to lure people out. I'm not saying that's what I saw, but I haven't gone back, and I haven't camped solo since. A few years back, maybe 2017, I had a weird experience while fishing that I've never been able to explain. I don't tell people about it much, mostly because there's no big climax or proof. Just a quiet, unsettling hike through the woods that stuck with me ever since. It was late September, and I'd taken a Friday off to fish one of my favorite spots about an hour outside of Des Moines. It's nothing fancy, just a narrow stream that cuts through some dense woods a couple miles off a service road. You hike in, cast a few lines, and most of the time you're out there alone. This afternoon, the weather was perfect. I got to the stream around 3, spent a few hours waist-deep in cold water pulling in trout, and completely lost track of time. It wasn't until the light started to fade that I realized I should pack up and start the hike back. It was that hazy kind of dusk where colors start to wash out, and the trees look more like silhouettes. I reeled in, clipped my gear to my pack, and headed back up the narrow trail. I figured I had maybe 30 minutes before full dark. A few minutes in, I heard something moving off to the left. Heavy and slow steps, crunching through the brush. It wasn't squirrel or birds, it was something bigger. I paused and looked over, but didn't see anything. Figured it was probably a deer and kept going. Maybe 2 minutes later, I heard it again, still on my left, same kind of movement. That's when I realized it wasn't falling behind, it was keeping pace with me. That's unusual. Most animals scatter when they hear you. This one didn't. It wasn't crashing around, just moving steadily through the woods beside me. I stopped and scanned the trees, but visibility was poor. The brush was thick and shadowed, the kind of light where your eyes start to play tricks. But I saw something. It was upright and very tall, at least 7 feet tall if I had to guess. It was only there for a couple of seconds, between 2 trees about 30 yards out. I couldn't make out the details, but it was broad-shouldered, dark-furred, or maybe just backlit, and shaped more like a man than an animal, except it had a snout. That's the part I remember most clearly. I stared, waiting for it to move, to shift or do anything, but it just stood there, and then it was gone, just stepped back into the shadows. I kept moving a little faster now. The trail narrowed after that, twisting through the thicker trees. I didn't hear anything for a bit, which somehow made it worse. I was maybe 15 minutes from the access road, and that's when I caught the smell. It was like wet fur and something foul, like rotting meat or bad garbage left out in the sun. Faint, but sharp enough to catch in my throat. I turned my head and saw it again, this time to the right and further back. Same shape, same posture. Upright, motionless, and watching. It had moved around ahead of me, or maybe there were two. I'm not sure. It didn't come any closer, didn't make a sound. Just stood there until I blinked and it was gone. I wasn't armed unless you count a multi-tool. Not that I thought about using it. My only real plan was to keep walking and not run. Just stay on the trail and make it back to the road. I didn't hear or see anything else for the next stretch. The light was almost gone by the time the trees thinned out. I turned on my flashlight and pushed the last 100 yards fast. My heart was pounding like I'd run a mile. At the car, I threw my gear into the back seat, got in and locked the doors. I sat there for a second just breathing and scanning the woods, but nothing had followed me out. I drove home and didn't talk about it for months. When I did bring it up, carefully, to an older guy at a bait shop, he didn't laugh. He just nodded slowly and said, "People have seen things in those woods before. Big things with 2 legs. He called it a dogman, like it was just a known local thing, a rumor. But his face stayed serious. I've been back to that stream a few times since, but only during the day and never alone. I've never seen it again, whatever it was. I don't claim to know what I saw, but I do know what it wasn't. It wasn't a deer or a bear or a person in a costume. It was something that looked like it shouldn't be standing up, but was. And it wasn't afraid of me. I think about how it never came closer, never made a move, just let me know it was there, like it was checking me out then letting me go. Ironically, kind of like a catch and release. I don't think I'll ever get a better explanation than that, and maybe I don't want one. I was 16 when I took a summer job on a ranch outside of Vernal, Utah. My Uncle Dale ran cattle on a few thousand acres along the edge of Dry Mesa, and he'd take on local teens when he could. Nothing official, cash pay, long days, dirt under your nails kind of work. I was trying to make some money for school and stay out of trouble. That summer was dry and hotter than usual. The dust hung in the air like it was glued there. Rattlers were out early, and the cattle had already pushed to the high pastures looking for green patches that barely existed. Dale put me on fence duty mostly, riding out along the property line, checking posts and mending wire. Sometimes I'd help move the herd, sometimes haul water. I slept in a spare room in the bunkhouse during the week, and rode back into town on the weekends. For the most part, it was a good gig. Quiet, honest work. But there was this weird tension I noticed among the older ranch hands. Not panic, just a stiffness. Eyes on the tree lines longer than they needed to be. Conversations would stop when I walked in sometimes, like they were talking about something they didn't want a kid hearing. One of the guys, Reuben, told me not to stay out past dark. Said it casual, almost like a joke. Out here, the dark ain't empty, kid. Then he winked and walked off. I figured he meant coyotes or maybe trespassers. But things started happening that made me wonder. First, it was the gates. I'd ride out to check a stretch of fencing and find a gate wide open that had been latched the day before. It wasn't just swinging from the wind. It was open like someone had walked through it. We didn't have hikers out there. The land was fenced tight and posted clearly. One time, I even found a set of boot prints leading up to the gate, but they stopped on the other side. No return tracks, no horse, no ATV, just gone. Another time, we found one of the calves dead, torn up bad but not eaten. No blood either, just a mess of shredded hide and muscle like something had played with it. Dale said maybe a mountain lion, but the other guys just exchanged looks and said nothing. None of this scared me exactly, but it put me on edge. It felt like something was going on, like something I wasn't being told. Then came the night I still think about. Dale had asked me to camp out at the far end of the property for a few nights to watch a section of fence we just repaired. There'd been signs someone or something had been slipping through that area. We couldn't afford any cattle getting out, and he wanted eyes on it overnight. I had my sleeping bag, a can of beans, a .22 rifle, and a handheld radio. There was no cell service out there. The ridge overlooked the tree line that marked the western boundary. Beyond that was reservation land, dense pinyon juniper scrub, no roads and no people. The first night was fine. I heard coyotes in the distance and saw a few shooting stars. I stayed up watching the fence line until around midnight, then crawled into my bag. The second night was when things got strange. I was sitting near the fire, not too big, just enough to keep warm and keep critters off. Around 11, I heard movement in the trees. It wasn't loud, just a slow measured crunch of dry branches, then silence. Then another few steps, like someone was walking but pausing often. I stood up and grabbed my rifle, called out, "Hello?" thinking maybe one of the hands was out there checking on me. I got no response, but after a few minutes had passed, I saw something. A shape just past the firelight. Not in the trees, but right at the edge where the brush started. It looked like a person, tall, thin, hunched a little, standing too still. I raised the rifle and said again, "Who's there?" Still no answer. The figure didn't move. I felt this chill crawl up my spine. Not fear exactly, more like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I didn't run and I didn't fire my rifle. I just stood there frozen. After maybe 30 seconds, the figure stepped back into the brush and disappeared. No sound and no movement after that. I kept the fire going all night and didn't even sleep. Next morning, I checked the area. No tracks and no signs anyone had been there, not even broken branches. I told Dale and he nodded slowly and said, "You don't need to go back out tonight. We'll rotate someone else in." Later that week, one of the older hands, Bill, sat down next to me on the fence trailer while we were stacking posts. He said real low, "You saw it, didn't you?" I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. He nodded. "They don't like being watched. You're lucky it left." I asked what he meant. "Skinwalker," he said real quiet. "Not the storybook kind. Just something old, from before us. Ain't ours to understand." I laughed at first, thought he was screwing with me, but he didn't smile. I asked how he knew, and he said something I still think about. They show themselves when they want you scared. If it wanted to hurt you, you'd never seen it at all. I never camped out solo again after that. Stayed through the rest of the summer, but the nights felt longer. The silence started sounding full. I kept my eyes low when walking the fence line. Nothing else ever happened directly to me, but there were stories, voices mimicking ranch hands' names late at night. A steer found standing dead, no wounds, just stone still like it dropped mid-step. Someone claimed they saw a coyote walking on two legs along the ridge at dawn. Dale never confirmed or denied any of it. Eventually summer ended and I went back to school and life went on. But I think about that night a lot, about how quiet it got, how unnatural that stillness was, how the figure didn't move, not aggressively, but with purpose, like it was just letting me know. Now years later, I don't tell this story to scare people. Honestly, I don't even know what it was. I just know I saw something real, something that didn't belong. Utah's got a lot of lonely space, and not all of it is empty. That's about all I'll say. You believe me or you don't, it makes no difference to me. I just don't camp on Dry Mesa anymore. I don't usually talk about this, not because I'm afraid people won't believe me. I mean, I know they won't. That's not the part that matters. I don't talk about it because even now, 20-some years later, I still get that cold feeling in my gut when I think about it. Like something brushing up against a nerve you forgot was raw. It happened back in the early 2000s. I was 16, living with my mom in a little trailer park on the outskirts of town. One of those places where the gravel crunches different under your feet at night, where the porch lights are always flickering or busted. It was just us two. Dad wasn't in the picture. We had a single wide, pale green, faded like everything else in our lives. It was on Lot 12 right across from the woods. People in town used to call it Timber Ridge, but there was no ridge and hardly any timber. Just a patch of woods that separated our row of trailers from a dried-up creek bed in the old abandoned grain elevator. No streetlights past Lot 17. After that, it was just shadows and trees. That night started normal. It was a Friday in early October, one of those chilly, restless evenings where it feels like something's about to happen, but you don't know what. The air smelled like burning leaves and old plastic. Mom had a double shift at the diner, so I was on my own. I was sitting on our busted little porch, legs tucked up, hoodie zipped up to my chin, Walkman plugged into one ear. I used to do that a lot, just sit and listen to music and watch the way the trees swayed under the porch light. The orange glow only stretched so far, and beyond it, the trees were nothing but a wall of black, like the night swallowed everything whole once you got past Lot 17. It was about 9:30 when I first felt it. I got this tight, sick knot in my stomach, like I'd just stepped off the edge of something without knowing it. The kind of dread that builds in your body before your brain catches up. My temples started to ache, like there was pressure building up behind my eyes. And then the porch light flickered. Not the usual weak buzz it did when bugs got stuck in it. This was different. It blinked once, bright, dim, bright again, then steadied. A second later, my Walkman made a soft popping sound and cut out. Just like that, dead. I pulled out the headphones and smacked it a couple of times, but it was toast. Cheap batteries, I figured. But that's when I noticed something else. A smell, like wet dog fur and old pennies, sharp and metallic. It hit the back of my throat in a way that made me want to gag. I turned my head toward the tree line. At first, I didn't see anything, just the usual mess of tangled branches and beer cans in the weeds. But something felt off. The porch light flickered again, just for a second. The smell got stronger, like something exhaled across the grass. And then I heard it, a soft shuffle, like leaves being pushed aside by something big and slow. I stared harder. I don't know if it was instinct or just plain fear, but I didn't move. Didn't even breathe too loud. I just stared into the dark. Something was out there. I couldn't see it, not clearly, but there was a shape between two trees, deeper than the black around it. You ever feel watched? Not like someone's peeking at you from behind a curtain, but like a pressure on your chest, on your soul? That's what it felt like. I blinked and it was gone. I told myself I was imagining things. Probably a deer or a coyote. That's what we all said around here when something moved out in the woods. Probably a coyote. Like that made it okay. I went back inside, locked the door, even though we hardly ever locked it. Drew the curtains and sat on the couch with the TV on low. I don't know how long I sat there, maybe 20 minutes, when I heard the thump. Not a knock, not footsteps. Just this solid, deliberate thump on the side of the trailer, right under the living room window. I froze, and then I heard another thump thump, like something testing the wall, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to feel. My brain tried to logic it out, maybe a raccoon, but raccoons don't make the ground vibrate under your feet. I tiptoed to the window and pulled back the curtain just a sliver. I didn't see anything out there, but I swear, just outside the ring of porch light, something shifted, a shape again, low to the ground but tall. It was big, too big for a man, and too long for a dog. I couldn't make out details, but I remember the feeling that something wasn't right about its posture. It wasn't just standing or crouching, it was coiled, like it didn't belong in its own body. I backed away from the window and turned off the lights, maybe if it thought I wasn't home. That's when the scratching started on the back wall, the one by my bedroom, soft at first, like nails gently dragging down aluminum siding, then longer, slower, and deeper. Something was circling the trailer. I grabbed the cordless phone and dialed my mom's cell. No answer. She was probably busy with the dinner rush. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? There's a big shadow dogman thing scratching at my trailer. Yeah, they'd sent help real fast. So I sat in the dark, clutching a kitchen knife with a chipped handle, and waited. The noises stopped for a while, just long enough to make me think it was over, that maybe it really was a raccoon or a coyote, or just my nerves. Then I heard breathing right outside my bedroom window, deep, steady, and wet. My window was shut, blinds down, but I could feel it. Something right there, inches from the thin wall, breathing in time with my heartbeat. And then it exhaled. Long and slow, almost like a sigh. I swear I saw the blind shift with it, just a little. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I just sat there on the floor, back to the dresser, blade in hand, heart in my throat. Then it spoke. Only one word, whispered, barely audible through the wall. Girl. I stopped breathing. I know what I heard. It wasn't my imagination. It was low, rough, like vocal cords that hadn't been used in a long time. Like it wasn't built to speak, but did anyway. Then silence. Long, awful silence. I don't remember how long I sat there. Maybe an hour, maybe 3. I only came back to myself when I saw headlights sweep across the living room window. My mom was home. I ran out of my room so fast I tripped on the rug and slammed into the coffee table. She barely had time to get out of the car before I threw the door open and crashed into her. She thought someone had tried to break in. I told her a wild animal had been outside. That was easier than the truth. She checked the perimeter with a flashlight and a tire iron. She didn't see anything though. But the ground outside my bedroom window had deep prints in the dirt. Longer than dog tracks, wider than a coyote. Almost human, but not quite. She said maybe someone's big dog got loose. Maybe. But the next morning, there were scratch marks on the back wall. Long ones like claws. We moved a year later. Mom got a new job and we left Timber Ridge behind. I never talked about it again until now. Sometimes I still dream about the shape in the trees. The way it just stood there, watching. The way it whispered like it already knew me. Some nights when the power flickers for no reason. When I smell something that shouldn't be there, wet fur, rust, I still hear it. Girl. I don't know what it wanted. I don't know why it left. And I don't think it ever really did. I've run a farm outside of Greenlee, Colorado for going on 22 years now. I've grown corn, wheat, 2 kids, and a hell of a lot of debt. It's nothing fancy, just 160 acres, a red barn that's been leaning left since '98, and a farmhouse my granddad built during the Dust Bowl. We're not new to hardship, but something happened last fall that I can't explain away with drought, equipment failure, or exhaustion. I'm 46, and I've always been the kind of guy who fixes what's broken, doesn't complain, and keeps his family safe. But after that October, there's a piece of me I don't think I'll ever get back. It started with coyotes. That's nothing new out there. Every rancher's got stories of chickens or calves getting picked off. But these ones were different. It was early October, harvest time, and my son Eli and I were pulling late nights hauling corn into the silos. I remember walking back towards the house one evening, just after sunset. The last light was slipping behind the Rockies, and I heard yipping in the tree line to the north. The old windbreak we planted years ago to cut down on prairie gusts. Except this didn't sound like coyotes. Not exactly. The rhythm was wrong. It was almost mimicked. Like someone pretending to be coyotes, but doing too good of a job at it. I stopped and listened for a while, but it died off. I figured I was just tired. That night, my wife Sarah woke me around 3 a.m. She said she heard footsteps on the porch, so I grabbed the 12 gauge and stepped outside, barefoot and half asleep. The wind was up, cold and dry, rattling the windows and stirring up fallen leaves. Our porch light blinked once, then steadied. There was nothing there. I walked the perimeter and checked the barn, even peeked down the gravel road. Not a damn thing. But the chickens were restless, and that's what bugged me. They weren't making noise, just clumped together in the back corner of the coop, stiff and wide-eyed, like something had been staring in. A couple days later, my daughter June, she's 16, loves painting and moody music, Came back from feeding the horses, pale as a sheet. She said she saw a man near the windbreak. Said he was tall, lanky, and no shirt, even though it was 40 degrees out. When she called out, he ran, on all fours. She swore he moved like a coyote, but bigger, wrong in the joints. I didn't say what I was thinking, just nodded and told her I'd take a look at it. But I knew she wasn't lying. June's not dramatic, she's sharp, observant. She described the man's skin like it was stretched too tight, shiny like a deer hide. That's when I thought of what my grandfather once told me back when I was too young to take it seriously. Stories from the Utes and Navajo. Things that walk like animals but think like men. Skinwalkers. He told me they're not folklore. He said the land remembers things long after we pretend to own it. Still, I'm not the superstitious type. I figured some meth head drifter wandered too close and spooked her. It happens. So I let the dogs out early that evening. Our two blue heelers, Kip and Bonnie. They're smart, loyal, and fearless. But that night they didn't come back. We found Kip the next morning, dead near the edge of the tree line. No blood, no torn flesh. Just lying there like someone had dropped him. Eyes wide, body cold. Not a mark on him. Bonnie didn't turn up until 2 days later. She wouldn't come near the house, and just stood out in the corn rows, staring toward the windbreak. She wouldn't eat, wouldn't bark. She wouldn't even look me in the eye. Something changed after that, in all of us. Sarah started locking the doors during the day, something we never did before. She stopped sitting on the porch in the evenings, started jumping at small noises. She told me she dreamed of something crawling under the house, whispering our names through the floorboards. June wouldn't feed the horses anymore. Eli started sleeping in his boots. He'd hear things, scratches on the outside walls, laughter out in the corn. Sometimes he'd come wake me up, saying someone was outside his window, but I'd check and there'd be nothing there. I started keeping the shotgun by the bed. The scariest night wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet. I was in the kitchen making coffee at 5 a.m. before heading out to check the irrigation line. There's a small window over the sink. It faces the north field. It was still dark out and stars were everywhere. As I stood there waiting for the coffee to drip, I saw someone walk past the window. I knew every soul on that property. No one should have been out there. I grabbed the gun and the big flashlight and stepped out the back door. The yard was empty. The horses were standing still in the pasture, heads low, facing the windbreak. Not grazing, not even moving. I scanned the light across the field, and that's when I saw it. A man, or something shaped like a man, standing just inside the tree line, tall, thin, and pale. He had a deer's head in his hand, just holding it. Not a skull, but it was fresh. Steam coming from the neck like it had just been torn off. I froze. My heart thudded once, painfully. Then he tilted the deer head up like a puppet and spoke in a voice I recognized. "Morning, Dad." It was Eli's voice. I fired once, but missed, I think. By the time I ran forward, it was gone. Just trees and leaves and the deer's head lying in the dirt, steam still rising from the neck. I found Eli in his bed, asleep. Deep sleep, too, not faking it. Sarah said he'd been having night terrors, but this wasn't that. Something was playing with us, mocking us. After that, I installed floodlights around the house, started sleeping in shifts with Sarah, but it didn't stop. We'd hear our names whispered from the cornfields. We saw our cows refuse to enter the barn after dusk. June said she saw herself standing at the edge of the property one night. Same hair, same clothes, same backpack, just watching her from the road. I know how this sounds. I wouldn't believe it either if it hadn't carved itself into my life like a scar. The final straw was the cellar. We don't use it much, just storage. But one morning I went down there looking for canning jars and found bones. Piles of them. All animal bones. Deer, rabbits, maybe some coyotes. Stripped clean, arranged in small spirals along the back wall. One looked like it had been chewed on. There were scratch marks in the dirt floor like claws, and that was enough. We left the next day, packed what we could, stayed with Sarah's sister in Fort Collins for a while, sold the farm a month later to a corporate outfit from Denver who didn't ask a lot of questions. I still don't know what it was. Some things don't want to be named. But I think we crossed the line, plowed too close to something ancient, too close to something that never wanted to be seen. Sarah doesn't talk about it much. She gardens now, reads a lot of mystery novels. Eli's joined the army, said he wants to be somewhere where there are rules. June still paints. Lately it's always trees. As for me, I keep a shotgun by the door. Even now, even in this new house, I don't sleep through the night. Sometimes I dream of Bonnie still standing in the corn, staring north, waiting for something to come back.